Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie Larkin. I'm a book publisher, author, and head penguin of Red Penguin Books. We work with authors of all genres in unleashing their inner author and working on their books together, whether they have a manuscript ready to go or a book that's been stuck inside their head for years. Just visit us at redpenguinbooks.com. And I am so excited today to be joined by two fabulous authors and guests of our show today, Amanda Montoni and Heather Siegel. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have a poet and an author. Not that a poet is not an author, but one who writes in shorter sentences.
Yes,
right?
very short sentences.
And I'm so delighted you're here. And Amanda is here for the second time because it's our second book of poetry.
Yes.
So when the third book comes out,
I'll be here.
all right. Glad to hear it. I have a Between the Covers membership card because Between the Covers is an online book club as well as a show so that our members get, as you did, an email blast letting them know when our show is on, free books, book deals, all sorts of book recommendations and things like that. So please head over to betweenthecoverstv.com and you can sign up to be in our online book club, and members can come anytime to our tapings here on Wednesday night and get a free glass of wine. So here's to wine for all of our members. I also wanted to mention another thing that we promote, which is the book fairies here on Long Island. The book fairies collect books for kids and for grown-ups who aren't able to get books themselves. They collect over 50,000 books a month and distribute them here on Long Island to school districts that don't have the money for libraries or personal books for teachers to be able to give out. They also ship books over to Africa where they are financing over 50 libraries there. So if you have any unwanted books in your house, please visit thebookfairies.org or drop them by here on any time we're filming. Get your free glass of wine and drop off your books. I have a trunk full right now from people who've dropped them off at the show, and every week after the show, I drive over to the Book Fairies to drop them off. So please support them. So I'm so excited that you're both here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
Thanks
thank you.
for being here. So I hope that you two, besides writing, because we're going to hear about your books, do you like to read also?
Yes.
Of course.
Because, I mean, was it Stephen King who said if you want to be a great writer, first, you have to be a great reader. So, Amanda, what are you reading now?
Right now, I'm reading two poetry books, but I brought one that I'm reading because it's very interesting.
Ooh.
It's a book of prose and poems by Nikita Gill.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and
look at that cover. That's
it's
gorgeous.
really pretty.
See that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And she did all the illustrations in her book as well. It's
really?
Yeah, it's a modern take on fairy tales like Peter Pan and Cinderella and Alice in
Oh
Wonderland.
my God, this is beautiful.
It's so
Rapunzel.
great. Rapunzel. They're all in there.
So it's poetry and it's fairy tales. Fierce fairy tales.
Yes.
Very nice. Okay, this is good because I never know when I go to the store or if I'm on Amazon what I should be looking at in poetry. I'm totally not a poet, so I'm loving the recommendation. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Thanks. And Heather, what are you reading or have you read recently? Anything good?
Yeah, I mean, I read all the time.
I'm sure.
I didn't bring the book, though, because I had to give it back to my stepdaughter. It's,
Well, that's good. Somebody else is going to read it.
Yeah, well, she lent it to me, Michelle Obama's new book.
I am dying to read that. It has been sitting on my night table for months now, and I'm busy reading like your book, which I read this week, and all of our authors. So tell me about it. Was it fabulous?
It was really good. I mean, it started off, it reminded me of an autobiography, and so I wasn't that into it because I really like a memoir more than an autobiography.
Yes.
But then the shape started to become a memoir, and it was super impressive because when she was talking about herself, whether she was talking about racism that she grew up with in Chicago, she broadened the story to talk about racism at large in the country. And so she did this all the way through the book, all the way even to the last line, which I just found myself like sobbing hysterically. It was a love story.
Oh.
It was her journey becoming the professional that she is, and it was also sort of a story about our country. So it was just, it had a lot of highs and lows in it. It was really impressive.
Oh, I love that. Now, I know that you're a teacher of writing too, so you know the difference between an autobiography and a memoir, and that is probably the question I'm asked most when I start to work with people myself. So can you explain it for us too?
Sure. An autobiography is, well, first of all, none of us should be writing autobiographies unless, we're
dead.
We're famous. No, unless we're famous.
Right.
Because, we're not really going to care, where I was born and, the small little events that happened to me along the way. But we care about a public figure, which is why presidents write them, which is why, celebrities write them. We're interested, how did this person become the person they are? Right. So, you don't really have to have much of a structure other than chronology for an autobiography. But for a memoir, V.S. Pritchett said, you get no credit for living, it's all in the telling. So for a memoir, it doesn't even matter if you have a great story. You have to craft it into an artful form. And, there are different structures you can use. You could use chronology, but it's more of like a slice of a person's life. Yes. It's, some sort of event or journey, and it has to have the literary elements of, that you would find in fiction.
Right. I'm so glad you said that. I always describe it that an autobiography is the story of a life, and a memoir is a story from a life. It could be like a piece, or like you said, a slice of it. And however they want to craft it, but there is that whole creative, literary portion of it, which when we speak about your book is, oh my God, so amazing. And I loved that creative portion. You had lines in there that just gave me chills.
Wow.
But I'm so glad you were. But I have one more question about Michelle's book, because the other question that everybody asks me, and it seems like everybody, people ask me book questions all the time. So since I have another book professional here, I could ask you. People ask me, as if Michelle Obama and I had coffee yesterday, they said, did she write it herself?
Oh, yeah, that
they
was
ask
definitely
me
a
that all the
question.
time.
I don't have the
I
answer.
know. That's what I said. I said, well, when we had coffee last night, she told me she did. Like, how do you think I know this?
There was a part of me that when I was reading it, I was just like, all right, this is so layered, like how she would craft a chapter, and then, as I said, sort of pull a thread through, and then just open it up to a universal meaning. And I was just like, wow. I mean, that was craft. What I was seeing.
Right.
And so you have to ask yourself, could somebody who is, a lawyer and,
right.
I don't know, could she do that? But then I thought to myself, why not? I mean, that is actually part of her persona, is she has, defied all odds, and she has done, what people don't think can be done.
Right.
And so by the end of it, my cynicism went away, and I thought she could have done it. That said, it's nice to have,
help.
A big house, a big publishing house behind you, I'm sure, with the top editors,
Yes,
So
I agree.
I'm sure that they helped. I mean, they weren't going to be like, oh, you wrote it, great, publish it and send it out,
right.
So, I think she had probably some editorial help, but I think that she is naturally a good writer because the voice is consistent throughout. And, that's something that you'd have to really just take over somebody's writing and just, become that voice.
Right.
And it does seem like her voice. It does match for me, when I see her speak.
Terrific.
So I'm going to vote yes.
You're going to vote yes?
With some high shine and some high
you and I
polish.
are in sync, man. Both
Okay.
on the definition of the memoir. Because that's exactly what I said. I said, I think that she did. But if you're asking me if I think that she didn't have some
course she had help.
professionals
Yeah.
looking, helping. Do I think that she actually sat there at a typewriter for all, I think that it is her voice, though. Absolutely, it is her voice and her craft that's in there. And next time we have coffee, I'm going to ask her.
Yeah, have her on. Get her on here.
Well, let's do it. Michelle, you're on. Next time we're on Between the Covers. Listen, we're going to go to a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Come on. No, I'm friends with her. I'm sorry, but that's the deal.
A little bit closer, a little bit to the left.
Yes, leave your beer, please. Okay.
There we go. 3, 2,
Daddy,
What?
Daddy! Daddy. There's Mommy. The sun is getting warmer, but when we soar away among the clouds, the sky is just a border. But when we're floating up like helium.
Welcome back to Between the Covers. Thanks so much for joining us. We're here with poetess, Amanda Montoni. Is there a word, do we differentiate poets and poetesses now? I'm not even sure.
We can.
We can.
We can.
And I'm delighted. Let's see your new book that you just released.
Thank
It's
you.
gorgeous. Thoughts While Singing.
Thoughts while singing, yes.
Because besides being a beautiful poet, you're also a fabulous singer.
Oh, yeah. I sing. I dabble in singing and acting. And,
Okay,
and stuff like
I
that.
see you. You more
And-
than dabble. but-
Yeah, I also direct musicals as well. So
And you dance and you choreograph.
yes, I do all of that.
So I'm
stuff.
not sure where you fit in writing poetry to all of this.
Well, what's cool about this book is I tied my love for music into this book. So at the bottom of each page, a song is credited that ties into, like the poem ties into lyrics from these songs.
Right.
And the way I structured it is I structured it like a musical. So you have the opening number.
Yep.
You have the I Want song. You have the 11 o'clock number, and
Yep.
then you have the finale. So that's the four sections of this book.
Because if our audience
Is,
didn't realize it before, every single musical is structured exactly the same way, so that there's the opening number, and then there's always that Act
I Want
One
song.
closer, or the What Do I Want, because
Yes.
the trajectory of the story is always they want something, they have to sing that song.
Yep.
So now when you all go to Broadway, you'll be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, and the 11 o'clock number is the one right before the finale. It's like right before the conclusion.
yup.
Yeah,
And they're all exactly the same.
yeah. They're all exactly the same. They all. Yeah, so that's how I kind of bunched my life into this book. The way I structured it.
I love that. Now, last time you were on with Trains, New York City, and the people. There's a long title.
Long and quirky.
A long, quirky title. I know there's trains in there.
Trains, New York, and the love or lack thereof that goes along with them.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So, since that book was written, you just started thinking about these new poems, or did the structure come to you first? How does one start a poetry book?
So I write poetry like all the time.
Okay.
It's kind of how how people have a journal or a
Right.
diary. That's how I get all of my thoughts out. And so when I was going through some poems, I put some titles to it, and then I realized, okay, the titles to these poems are lyrics to songs, and there were only like 2, but I was like, can I make a book out of that?
Right, right.
So then everything kind of flowed from there. Some of the poems were inspired by these songs,
Okay.
and then some of them I already wrote,
Right.
and tied them to, found a song to tie them to.
Gotcha.
And the structure came about after that.
Okay.
Yes. So I when I was debating on how should I section off this book,
So the
That's
poems
how-
were there, and then the structure came.
Yes,
Not the
the-
structure came, and then the poems
right?
came.
Yeah, the poems were there first for this one.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's really cool because it's really interactive because
Yes.
it's like the book has a soundtrack.
Yes.
And it's all of these different
that.
kinds
I
of genres
love
of music.
that.
It's musical theater, it's show tunes, it's soundtracks to movies, there's pop punk music in there, there's pop music,
Well, because
there's
you're a
Disney.
multifaceted person
Yeah,
here.
there's Disney,
There's Disney, of course. There's
Fleetwood
Disney.
Mac, like everything. So it's really, really cool how this. I think it's really cool how I kind of infused everything into one.
I
book.
love that it's infused your love of poetry with your other facets of your persona, your musical sense and your dramatic sense and all those things. It's like, this is me.
Yeah.
I think that that's fabulous. Could you read some poems?
Yeah,
for us?
absolutely. I'll
love
read some
that.
for you.
Oh,
I have
thank
two
you.
prepared
Oh,
for
good,
you.
good.
Even though there's a bunch of Post-it notes,
I see a lot of Post-it notes.
Yeah.
I'm like, we don't have that much.
Oh, please, we'll be here for 3 hours.
That's fine. I'm good. We have more wine.
Yay, more wine. Okay, so this one, the poems in this book, just a disclaimer, the poems in this book are very, very personal. And this is way more personal than my first book.
Really?
Yes, this is solely written on my emotions and how I feel about certain aspects of my life, like friends, family,
Right,
whether
right.
it's, a romantic interest or something like that. So this is
So
one.
are people going to be gasping as they hear this, like, oh, I know who that is? Or things
Yeah,
like that?
people will be like, yeah,
Oh,
I know who
really?
that is. Yeah.
Ooh,
Or
okay.
like, I know who this is about,
Oh, it's really that personal.
Yeah.
Like-
or they'll be like, wait a second, who is this about? You know,
so then they're thinking.
So then they're thinking. Yeah, I toe the line.
like
Okay, so here's the first one. Living in the present is hard to do because every time I hear our favorite songs, I fuse the past into my passenger seat and beam as we sing along on the tops of our lungs, not giving a care about who is listening beyond the car windows. And that one is tied to Don't Forget by Demi Lovato. So, so my younger self is showing in that song.
I
but-
love that.
Thank
I
you.
love that. I won't ask who, but
Yeah.
wow.
Thank you very
I have
much.
such an image. I just have such an image in my head. I do.
This next one is very personal to me. It's about my grandmother. She passed away a couple years ago. You taught me how to sing off-tempo. You showed me how to waltz through the dining room. You read me stories of lovely shadows and watched them with me on the screen. You took me to see the magic come alive for the very first time. Little did I know, getting to know you would become my world. You've left me a love that will last my lifetime and a heart that beats to make you proud.
I'm sure Grandma's so
Yeah.
proud.
She, this one's tied to Getting to Know You from The King and I.
I was going to ask.
Yep. She used to sing that song
Really?
when I was a kid, just all around the house. She'd had, the movie musicals on TV, and she'd sing The King and I. She'd sing Gigi. She'd sing all of these old musicals, and she is the reason why I do what I do today.
I love
She's the reason why I fell in love with theater. So,
Really?
yeah.
Oh, I love that. Seat for Grandma on the
Yeah.
front row at every show. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, why did you get much more personal with the second book? Was it a deliberate choice, or are you just feeling more free with your writing, like you want to go there?
Yeah, I was definitely feeling more free, and the more I wrote every day, and whatever was going on in my world, they just were very, very personal. If I tried to write something that wasn't very personal, it didn't come out right. So I was like, nope, I just have to say it short and sweet, or get my feelings out right there in the open, in your face.
Right.
And that's how it came to be.
I would guess that that's something that you kind of build into, because it's scary.
It's tough.
It's scary at first. And we're going to talk about your book, which is so personal, and you work with people every day on writing, and going there is so scary. I could see why you kind of went, here was the first book, and it sounded like it was personal, like, oh, here's the story of my, a poem about my first love, but now you're actually saying, yeah, this one I went
Yeah.
deep. It's scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. A lot of people can't let themselves be fully open.
Yeah.
So for
Well,
me to
especially
take
not in a
this
book
step,
because people pick it up and read it.
it's there forever on a page.
That's right.
So with this, I was like, I just got to get it out.
Good for you. Good for you. Do you feel differently about this book than the last book because of that?
Yep.
Now, do you feel more protective or more proud, or maybe both? I don't know.
I feel more proud.
Okay.
I feel more proud. It's more of like a personal growth kind of thing. Like
Right.
I never thought that I could be this personal on paper and like find a way to get my feelings out in a way that was raw.
Right.
Or as raw as I can be. If I can go raw, well, then
I'm
that's a
terrified
question
what the
that
next-
has to be answered.
Exactly. Book number
but
3. Exactly.
But so far, this-
Amanda keeps going down right in deeper. What's that third book going to
into the
say?
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
No, but I just for this one, I was like, yep, I'm proud I got this out there.
You know what I love is that you're sitting here and you're so proud and you did this. And, you know, we have a lot of viewers who I'm sure are writers who are scared because it's scary. And you're not sitting here looking like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that, man. You know, no, you don't look like that. You look like, boy, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
And so proud of yourself for doing that. And I'm so proud of you and thrilled that you're saying that because there's a whole lot of people who are scared to go there.
Yep.
And you're an inspiration. I love that.
Thank you. It was a way of therapy for me because when I wrote this, there was a lot going on in my life.
Right.
And this was how I got through it. I always say don't get over something, go through something.
Right.
Because otherwise, you're kind of just burying it.
Yes.
So you have to go through it, through the mountain. Not
Love
over
it. Love it. Okay, well, you know what I love? I need an autographed copy so that when she wins her Pulitzer Prize, I can be like, here's my autographed copy.
Oh, stop.
You never know.
I
You
know.
never know. We're going to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Thank you. Thank you.
You never know.
I know you never.
Everybody get up when you're feeling down. Everybody get up, turn your life around.
When you trust yourself, you have the power to make up your life. Studio 1031 is an environment where excellence is always expected. We work with all types of people from all walks of life. We give deserving women something that they wouldn't give themselves.
Everybody get up.
Come join this makeup movement. When you're feeling down, turn your life around. Make up your life.
I know it's gonna be alright.
Welcome back to Between the Covers. Thanks so much for joining us. Our next author is Heather Siegel, whose book Out from the Underworld was a finalist in the Indie Book Award of the Year. So I'm so proud to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Love, love, love the book. I was
Thank
like
you.
sobbing my eyes out.
Read
Thanks
it
for
fast.
nothing. you sent it to me, with enough time. It wasn't like 4 hours ago. And if it was 4 hours ago, I still would have had to do it. But hey, but it was fabulous. I couldn't put it down.
Thank you.
But talk about going there as far as personal.
Oh, yeah.
Just amazing. But before we even get to the book, tell us a little bit about you, because you're a writer and a teacher of writing.
Yeah, well, this childhood, actually, and this coming-of-age story made me a reader.
Yes,
So
I
it
remember that.
really is the story of, being in a dark world and finding a way out through literature. I didn't really want to become a writer until maybe in my 30s.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't even, it's just I was reading to get out of this metaphorical underworld.
Yes, yes.
And so mostly nonfiction narratives, which also put my life in perspective. So when I would come across, Elie Wiesel or Richard Wright or James Baldwin, I would say, all right, I don't have it so bad. But then I got hooked on the nonfiction
Right.
narratives, and so that was my reading choice. And so I gravitated toward, when I wanted to write, actually tried to write something in fiction in a writing course at Hofstra. And the person who would turn out to be my mentor pulled me aside and said, what is this? This is like propaganda for PETA. And I said, yeah, pretty much. And he said, no. He said, come into my office. And it turned out to be a famous writer, Philip Lopate. And he said, I read, your essay to get in here. He said, you have to stick with nonfiction. He's like, what was that stuff you were writing about your mother? And so I began to try to tell that story, and that's what made me even want to write it. And then eventually, after I read pretty much every memoir ever written, I decided, well, why can't I throw my story onto the shelf?
Good idea. I'm amazed, though, that you said when you were younger that it was nonfiction that was drawing you. I would have thought, to be honest, that it would have been something like fantasy, fiction that would have drawn you to get escapism.
Well, I mean, I did start, I read anything.
Right.
I didn't have any taste. I would just go to the library and I would just pull anything off.
Right.
But what would grab me is, people who were overcoming struggles.
Yes.
And I was much more attracted to the real true story of
love
somebody's
that.
life than I was something made up.
Right.
Also, like, I was attracted to humor. So I found Irma Bombeck and I was like, oh my God, I love her. And I read everything that I could. And I did read fiction too, but I would always find myself reading it and just going, it's like a little made up, but when I would read something that somebody went through,
Right. No,
that
I get
was,
that.
it was just sort of like a pathway out.
Yes.
And so, and also I would read humorous nonfiction, or people who survived terrible circumstances and developed a sense of humor out of it, because that's what growing up in this world was about for me. I had my brother and my sister, and we would just, have these terrible things happen, and then we would laugh about it. We would sit there and make jokes to each other about it and laugh about it, and that is something that a lot of people said made this a palatable read for them, because it wasn't just full darkness. It
Right.
was, it's the middle child perspective, and it's told with that humor that I embody now as the writer, looking back on those events. So I think that at least I tried to do that. I think that I succeeded at it, I hope.
But you absolutely did. And I'm so glad you said that you were in the darkest parts and you would say something. There was a line I should have bookmarked on because I read it on Kindle. And instead of just saying, oh, it smelled like sickly sweet, you said something about old Fruit Loops floating in the book. And I was like, I know that smell. Like, I was right there. And everything just put me right in the place, but with humor. You're right. She was going through
you.
horrible things and somehow found, the other side. So she was looking at both. You. we're looking at.
Well, that's funny that you say that because I know that we're here to talk also about writing.
Yes.
But one of the things that I had to do is I had to think about who my character was.
Yes.
Writing this memoir. And so there are two characters, and one of them is me now, the writer, looking back, and then the other is the character as she develops through this coming of age story.
Right.
And so it's my voice that tells it, but I am aware of the character arc of my
Yes.
character. In this.
Absolutely. And when the character was 5 years old,
Yeah.
it was a very different voice than
Yeah.
as a grown-up, which was fabulous to read. You were growing up with her, which was just amazing. When you were writing this, were you, sobbing your eyes out as you were reliving, laughing hysterically?
It's funny because I had a student recently ask me, how do you write through the pain? How do you,
Right.
when you're in this horrible, painful situation, how do you write through it? And my answer to her is, I don't know, because I don't do that. What I do is I walk away from an experience, I digest it,
Okay.
I sit with it for a bit, and in this case, I sat with it for 30 years. And, a lot of people, and then I write about it. So I wrote from a healed place.
Okay.
A lot of people, would ask me over the years, how are you guys so normal? My brother, my sister, and I.
Right.
And I would tell the story. So I told this story about, 20 or 30 times before I ever sat down to write it, and the more that I told it, the more that I realized that this is absurd and unnecessary. And it was what I was experiencing as a teenager, only at the time I was experiencing it, I was angry about it.
Right.
Now, I was just like, that is just absolutely ridiculous. Why were 3 children put into foster care who had Jewish grandparents living upstairs?
Right.
Right, with 2 spare bedrooms that I used to dream about, like, making into my own, one of them. Why was
yeah.
my father insistent when he made a professional funeral director salary on taking us to live in this basement apartment? This is after foster care, when he could clearly afford an apartment with windows. And by the way, I knew that those existed because I lived in middle-class suburbia.
Right.
And I had friends who had, kitchen tables, windows.
Right, normal things.
People who, like their parents, some of them were divorced. A single mother, for example, who was a teacher, who owned an actual house, that had a kitchen, that had a refrigerator that wasn't in the living room, of our basement. I was aware that there was a world outside of this world that, was being presented to us. And that's also part of the coming of age is, the acknowledgement. And reading, of course, broadens your world even more.
Yes.
And so that was the way out.
Right.
I didn't know what I would do. I didn't know how I would afford anything. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I wasn't going to live in a basement. And there was a big wide world out there, and I was going to figure out something. I mean, I could afford an apartment somewhere. And so the 3 of us, we found our way out.
Yeah,
But
it's amazing.
emotionally, that would probably take a little longer.
Yes.
But that was where the humor was developed.
And at this point, do you have a basement in your house, or do you not even want one?
That's really funny because I never go down there.
I bet.
Never go down there.
I'll
and
bet.
I just moved into a farmhouse, and that basement is scary. There's cave crickets down there.
Oh, God, I would
There's,
never go down there either.
And my husband, he really understands, and he understands my story, and he just, could not believe the absurdity of it all. I took him to see the actual basement. He couldn't believe it. Because my sister, well, I'm not going to give away the story.
Don't give away the story. You have to buy the book on Amazon.
He knows I don't go down there. And so there's a washer dryer down there. And so he was kind enough to install one upstairs in a closet.
Nice.
So I never go to that basement.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Crickets?
Those things are horrible, and they're everywhere on the island.
Oh, that's just awful. Thank goodness. Thank goodness you got out of that basement.
Yes.
And even better that you wrote this.
Thank you. I have a second book coming out.
Oh, tell me.
It's called The King and the Quirky.
Okay.
And it's a memoir of, here we go, it's a mouthful, I know there's a rule of 3, but in this case, I feel like, being a married woman and being a mom, it's too complex for just 3. So I'm going to go with a rule of 5. But anyway, so it's The King and the Quirky, and it's a memoir of love, marriage, domesticity, feminism, and self. And it's a fun, light, introspective about marriage and stay-at-home life and feminism and self-identity.
Terrific. When is that coming out?
That's coming out April 29th, 2020.
Fantastic. Nice. Well, then I guess I'm going to ask you to come back to our red couch
I'd
when
love
that
to.
comes
Thank you.
out. But in the meantime, heathersiegel.net and get a copy of this book. We're going to just hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Thank you, Stephanie.
And can I please have your autograph, Heather?
Inspired by aerobic classes and a dream, Body by Tamika has helped hundreds of women reach their fitness goals. One size doesn't fit all, and neither should your fitness experience. Body by Tamika is about creating an environment where women can come together to work out, meet new friends, and get inspired. Whether you desire to lose weight, tone up, or prepare for a mommy makeover, Body by Tamika is here to help. Body by Tamika is considerate to female weight loss challenges resulting from pregnancy and or life changes that can be extremely resistant to diet and exercise. For stubborn problem areas, Body by Tamika offers non-invasive aesthetic procedures such as laser lipo and wood slimming body contouring. Book your free consultation today to see for yourself.
Are you a tie lover? You love the diversity in ties because they come in different colors, fabrics, patterns, etc. Get access to a wide variety of neckties. Buy from or trade with other tie lovers. Don't wear ties anymore? You have more ties than you know what to do with? Want to turn all those ties into real money? Do you just need a tie? You just need a tie for a special occasion. Now you can buy a tie today and sell it tomorrow. The Necktie Exchange, the online retailer where you buy, sell, and trade neckties. Register today.
Dropping gems from Keisha Christian. She's on a mission, sharing information, knowledge for soul, body and mind. Dropping gems, KeishaGems.com. KeishaGems.com.
Some of her eyeshadow, and she said, "Mom, there's a red cardinal outside."
Welcome back to Between the Covers. Thanks for joining us.
Totally here.
I had one other question for Heather, and she jumped in and answered it for me. When you're writing a personal memoir, and it's about people who maybe are not the most flattering characters in the world, how do you manage that with people who are still alive?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I think that in speaking to what we were talking about before, I think your first draft should always be raw and honest. And I think you have to write like no one's watching.
Gotcha.
Okay, and no one's reading. And then when you secure a publisher and you're ready to hand over the final edit, you go, you know what, let me run through this one more time. And then you can run through it, and then you can understand. I mean, this story, at the heart of it, it's compassion. Yes. So even if there is an unflattering portrait painted here or there, it is about, like, you know, getting out of that underworld, that victim mentality that was passed on generation to generation. And, you know, how do you do that? You know, you do that through reading, because that fosters empathy. Right. And then also it allows you a sense of compassion for someone. And so, talking about writing from a place of being healed, you know, at one point I was able to write this story because I didn't judge someone anymore.
Right.
Okay, so write your first draft as if no one's watching, and then put it in a drawer, and then come back to it, and then when you're ready to, edit it, you really do have to pretend it's getting published, and then you have to say, am I willing to say this about somebody?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I wasn't, so I changed their names.
Yes,
I have some things in there like
there was
that
a
too.
line right at the beginning.
I agree with you.
There was a line right at the beginning that I loved. Where was that? It said something about, while I've changed some names, places, and dates, this is unfortunately a true story. And that even before I got to the prologue, I was like, stab! Like I knew where this was going just from reading that blurb right there. And so you did change some names.
I did change some names, but it's pretty obvious if you do know me personally who some of these people would be.
Right.
Like, my father was a big one.
Yes.
Because I didn't agree with his choices as a mother and as a a grown-up. Looking back, I didn't agree with some of those choices. And so how to handle that? Well, I mean, one of the things I did was I thought of him as, a three-dimensional character, and somebody who had many sides to him and not just, the villainous side, right?
Right.
So I thought about him as a teenager. I thought about him as a child. I thought about his upbringing. I brought all of that backstory in. And so, the reader doesn't judge him either.
Right. Now, did he read the book?
So he read the book. He read the book. I gave it to him a week before it came out. I told him about it for a long time. I was going to do this, and then it finally happened, and I gave it to him. And he read it, and he told me that I didn't know that you felt that way about certain things, and but he also understood that it was in a weird way a portrait of love too. So. That was difficult.
I bet.
That was difficult.
That sounds really difficult. Which leads us right into, I was going to ask our writing experts here to talk to us a little bit about the 4 biggest causes of writer's block and how people can get over them. And the first one, of course, is fear. And both of you addressed fear in your books because you were dealing with something so raw. And often that fear is just of rejection, fear of being judged, fear of failure. Did you feel that when you were writing? And what would you maybe recommend to all of our hopeful writers out there about dealing with fear?
Well, I mean, I feel like I just spoke to that. I mean, you
Yeah,
have to write.
you
have
did.
to write
Absolutely.
as if no one's
Well,
going to read it.
I like that to deal with the fear by plowing through it, but first draft. I'm so glad that you said that because so many people think, once that pen touches the page or, fingers touch the keys, that it's public and it's out there and everyone's reading it. And really, that's your first draft.
Yep.
You should dump, but then you do have time to think about things and not worry about them, clean them or do whatever you need to do.
Like you were saying before, how someone asked you how do you write through the emotion and stuff like that, and you said I step away and then I come back to it. That's what I do too.
I like that.
When I'm going through a really, really, really tough time and I'm angry, I don't just put my pen to paper.
Right.
I sit there, I think about my situation, and then I write the first draft.
Right. But even if you
And
did
then-
write angry, that doesn't mean you're publishing that.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And then when it comes to fear of like being rejected or whatever, the way I kind of feel about it is be most true to yourself as you possibly can. And, these are your actual thoughts and your actual feelings, if you're whatever you're trying to say.
Right.
That's hard to do, so you should be happy that you kind of conquered your fear in that sort of way.
No, that's
So-
absolutely true. You're sitting
Yeah.
here, the books are published. Hey, you got through it. Which means that you also got through our biggest challenge number 2, which is procrastination. And trying to keep it going when you just can't. Did you either of you deal with like, yeah, I'll just let that go? Did it sit in a drawer? Did you wake up in the morning and say, I'm not doing this? Or do you deal with people?
You want to speak to that first?
Usually if if I'm like, I can't do this right now, I step away and I do something else to make me not think about what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
I try to let my brain go to someplace else and then come back to it later, because usually when I'm doing something else, like if I'm with me, it's either like choreographing a dance number or something like that, or even just watching a show on Netflix. Something with what I'm doing will spark,
And you'll go back.
and then I'll go back.
How about you?
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been. I think of writing as just, similar to other things in life. So it's, to me, it's similar to working out.
Yes,
Procrastination.
and some of us don't, and some of us do.
Well, right. Okay.
Right? I'm
so
glad
it
you said
depends on-
working out.
It depends
'cause-
on how much you want it.
Well, that's
And
true.
so I think just showing up and deciding I want this and I'm going to do this, oftentimes is enough. But also, I think it's important to fuel the artist in you.
Yes.
And so you need to watch the movies on Netflix that you like. You need to, spend time with your friends and go out and have
You have
fun.
to be good to yourself.
You have to be good to you. Self-care, because if you're not charged, then what are you going to give?
No, that makes
Right.
perfect sense. But I think that there are a lot of things in life that we want to do, and like you mentioned, working out. I'd love to exercise more often. It really doesn't happen. and true, I guess I don't really want it enough. But some people really do want to write, and they just, need some edging on because they just keep.
Well, then
writing and feels.
reading, because reading, will definitely get your mind going,
like that, yeah.
and spark some ideas for you, and hopefully you don't plagiarize, but you just are inspired.
No. Our next biggest challenge with writer's block is perfectionism. And I find this with people I work with a lot, and I'm constantly saying, write, don't edit. Like, write first. And you said something very similar with get that first draft out. People, I find, so often are sitting there and they're trying to craft this word to be, or this sentence to be, and then they only wrote one sentence. They sat there for 3 hours, they wrote one sentence. They're never going to get anything done. Just keep going. And, that's at least what I say, but you work with writers all the time. Do you find that they are trying too hard to fix instead of going forward?
I mean, I encourage in my classes for everyone to, think of the larger picture and not the tedium sentence by sentence. Because, and I also think organization is great. If you can come up with some sort of an outline or a roadmap.
Right.
However, everybody's process is different. Some people need to,
They can't move on.
No.
Right.
So it really, it's a case-by-case scenario what people's processes are.
No, that's very true.
Yeah.
If somebody can't go on until this is set, they can't go on.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you spend too much time on one sentence, for example, right? I mean, you're never going to see the macro picture. And so sometimes it's better to see the overall story of what's happening. And then you can go back and spend as much time as you want to continue to mold that and
I like that. And our fourth and final challenge for writer's block is distractions or Netflix
or social media
or social media or any of the other millions of distractions we have. It's a distracting world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. Sometimes when these distractions are getting too much and I have writer's block, I'll just free write. So instead of concentrating on what I'm trying to write, I will just let the words float. Whatever I'm thinking about, just let the words float. They don't have. The beautiful thing about free writing is it doesn't have to make perfect sense. It's just literally getting whatever words you can on paper.
Right.
And sometimes my free writes have turned into stories.
Right.
So that's kind
And
of.
other times it was just trying to clear your head.
Yep. Exactly.
Are you distracted by social media, Netflix, children, phones?
Well, I don't consider Netflix a distraction because for me, that's also like, I mean, a story is a story. And so it's just a different medium.
Until you've sat there for 16 hours straight.
Well, no, I mean, but I think that, first of all, the number one thing that I did in my life, which it changed my life, was shutting off the notifications.
Oh, I like that, yes.
And, deciding, okay, morning, coffee time, that's the time to send out the couple of posts, and then maybe evening time, go back and look and, respond to them.
Right.
But to spend all day doing that
Yes.
is, I'm not going to lie, sometimes I'll be in the middle of an essay and I'm like, all right, what's going on Facebook? That does happen, but, that's a choice. But
Right.
getting those notifications was driving me crazy
Yes.
because they were
Bing.
as important
Bing.
as important on my homepage as texts or phone calls from my family or
Right,
whatever.
right.
And so shut those off.
Good point. I like that. I just read a statistic that the average person checks Facebook 14 times a day.
Wow.
Sounds about
Turn it off. Well, not right now because we're streaming live. And we're just going to hear from our sponsors and we'll be right back.
Everybody get up when you're feeling down. Everybody get up, turn your life around.
When you trust yourself, you have the power to make up your life. Studio 1031 is an environment where excellence is always expected. We work with all types of people from all walks of life. We give deserving women something that they wouldn't give themselves.
Everybody get up.
Come join this makeup movement. When you're feeling down, turn your life around. Make up your life.
I know it's gonna be alright.
Welcome back to Between the Covers. Heather, where can our audience find you and what are you doing next? What's up on the docket? What should we expect?
You can find out about me or contact me on my website, heathersiegel.net.
Yes.
That's what it is. I teach creative writing on Long Island in various towns. I go out to continuing ed programs and I'm at local colleges. And that's about it.
I know
Instagram, Heather Siegel.
We have a whole audience full of Heather's students here today, so I'm so thrilled. Thank you. And Amanda, how about you? Where can we find you? Buy the books. Your book is it available on your website, Heather? Or
It is. You can find it on the website. It's on Amazon, through Barnes & Noble.
all those places, heathersiegel.net, the whole thing, yes. And Amanda, where can we find you?
You can also find me at my website, amandamontoni.com. And on Twitter, Amanda_Montoni, or Instagram, Amanda.Montoni.
Oh, look at that, all these little punctuation things.
And my book is also on the website and is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that stuff.
Terrific.
Yes.
And if you forgot all of that stuff, if you go to BetweenTheCoversTV.com, we have links to our authors' websites, to their books. I'm hoping if they send us any events that are coming up, we'll post them on our website and blast them out to all of our viewers. So please visit us at BetweenTheCoversTV.com, and I hope that you have a wonderful week and happy reading. Thanks for joining us.